Welcome to On Air with Akilah, the genius. I'm here today with Denise Silva-Dennis, the workshop coordinator for Ma's House, which is a BIPOC art studio and gallery. So, Denise, thank you so much for being on the show today. I was honored to be on a private museum tour when I visited the Hamptons over the weekend, and it was just amazing to talk to you because you have so much history and knowledge that I would love to tap into, right? So we started having a really deep conversation, but then the group was leaving, and then I was like, okay, I got to talk to you further.
Great.
So thank you for agreeing to be on my platform. So explain to everyone, what does BIPOC mean?
Okay, BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color.
Okay, so the Ma's House is a Black, Indigenous, and People of Color museum. So no one owns it then?
Well, it is owned by Jeremy now, but he's the founder of Ma's House because it's a family. It was an old family house that he turned into a BIPOC center on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation.
Okay, so Ma is your mother.
Yes.
The museum is your childhood home.
Right.
And it is on, I want to say you told me it's on 800 acres.
Yes, it's part of the 800 acre peninsula out here on the Shinnecock Nation.
That is something.
With a peninsula, that's surrounded three ways.
Right.
And then the west is kind of sticks out into the water. So it sticks out into Shinnecock Bay and Hetty Creek. And then to the south of us is Dune Road. And over Dune Road is the ocean. But it is connected, to land. The beginning of the reservation goes along Montauk Highway. But many years ago, back in the mid 1800s, the Southampton town proprietors used a false instrument and said that we traded over 4,000 acres in Shinnecock Hills to live on the peninsula, which was always ours too. Because being Indigenous, everyone owns the land. And that's one of the reasons why you can't get a mortgage here. So you have to build the best way that you can.
So when people hear, I know when I hear that you live on a reservation, so to speak, would you call it a reservation? When you live on a reservation, there's no mortgage. Everyone who's from your nation or your, can I say tribe? Is that like not politically correct?
That's used. It's kind of like it's how, different words are used. Like people want to stay away from Native American, then they want to kind of stay away from Indigenous or Indian. And then some people just want to be called by, where they're from. So like the Navajo people, they like to be called, not even Navajo, Diné for them. And so Shinnecock is ours. And the whole surrounding area is called Shinnecock Bay, Shinnecock Canal, Shinnecock Hills.
Right.
And those Shinnecock Hills is the part that was taken from us. And that was our traditional place to live.
Interesting. Okay, so when people hear that you live on a reservation with nothing but Shinnecock people, right?
Or who they married, you could have married with, other people, other places.
But I think that sounds amazing. But then I feel like there's some, underwriting to that we don't really know what's like really going on, because to be Indigenous, right? I mean, I don't really know my roots as a Black American. I don't. I do know what I've heard through the years of where my family is from, as far as, obviously we're Native American, right? But what people, what nation are we from? I don't know. And then, so there's so much to it. And so talking to you just sparked all of this in me. And I'm like, why have I never heard of Shinnecock, or not heard of it as much as we've heard of like Cherokee and Navajo and, or the ones that we like always hear of. Like, so I don't even know what I'm asking you right now. because there's so much in that. It's like, what is it that we don't know, right? You didn't have a mortgage to pay, but what was the flip side to that? You know what I mean? Um, you know who your people are, but does that make you any more, I'm not going to say connected to the earth, but how do you feel living, you know, in America, where people have come, colonized, taken what belonged to you, and then I don't know, and then just kind of misplaced you, whatever. Like, just speak to all of that.
It's a lot to speak to. Well, speaking of about the Cherokee Nation, they were moved. So
Hmm.
that was Andrew Jackson, President Andrew Jackson, who is our current president. Somebody he looks up to, moved those indigenous people from the East Coast states, to the west to Oklahoma. As
Yes.
far as Shinnecock, we were moved around, but we were moved still on our ancestral land. So where we're from, our land was really about half an hour away going west, which would be the Mastic and Shirley area, and our border would be East Hampton. So it's like maybe half an hour on each side. And then to the north, there was another native nation called the Korchog, and there's still people who can trace their relatives to the Korchog people, but they were very much wiped out. There's still in East Hampton, all the way to Montauk Point, there are still Montaukett people, but their land was also stolen in the 1800s, and their land was completely stolen and made into state parks. So they're always in the news, actually requesting the different governors of the
Hmm.
state to reinstate them as an indigenous people with their land. And so they're trying to get federal recognition through, I believe, with help from Governor Hochul, but she's not signing off on that for whatever reason. But with Shinnecock, we have always been able to keep our land. And I just believe it was mostly because of this peninsula that we're on, that at least we had, some kind of way to keep people off of the land in a way, because Montauk Highway separates us from our other ancestral lands. So, thinking about today, as an indigenous person, as a Shinnecock person, I'm also from another nation through my father, and that's called the Hassanamisco Nation. That's in Grafton, Massachusetts. I'm the youngest in the family, and all of us, because both families have indigenous roots and are members of these nations, we try to get away from tribes because that's what the colonizers named us, or even Indians. But I mean, it still pops out of my mouth sometimes.
Hmm.
But I'm involved. I worked in the Southampton School District as an educator for over 20 years, and I retired about 6 years ago from there. And since then, I've been involved in a number of different 501c3 nonprofits. One of them is called Neomuk Land Trust. Another one is called Graves Protection Warrior Society. Also Hamptons Community Outreach, and then the Peconic Land Trust, I'm on the board. So some of the things that happened to us recently was in 2019, 18, during the United States Open. That's a big, huge golfing group that come out here. It's nationally known, internationally known. And they use Shinnecock Hills Golf Course.
Hmm.
And that is part of our burial grounds. So we
Wow.
demonstrated that year. My niece, I think she was one of our trustees in leadership, and my daughter, who's an attorney, made arrangements with the Southampton town to have peaceful demonstrations just to let the golfers, and it gets national, international attention when it's a U.S. Open. And just to say, you are playing on the burial grounds of our Shinnecock relatives. They're still there. Some of them have been taken to the different museums, sold away along with their artifacts. And it wasn't until 2010 when we were always recognized by the state of New York, but in 2010 we were recognized by the federal government. So that gives you different status through the Department of the Interior, and that gives you access to different museums to go and say, hey, you have some of our relatives that you once had on display along with their artifacts, and we need them returned and brought back. So that's where Neomuk Land Trust comes in and Peconic Land Trust by securing land in order to put our relatives back where they, as close as we can get to where they were dug up from, so that they can be eternally at rest. So we're kind of doing backpedaling of all these horrible crimes that have happened in our time.
So they dug your relatives up.
Right.
So yeah, this is just deep. It's just deep. So they created the golf course first, or did they dug your relatives up first, then created the golf course?
Well, before the golf course, it goes back in time and a little bit earlier in the 1800s. There was this physician in New York City who came out to Southampton, and he's very prosperous. He built his big mansion, and so he got other friends of his from New York City to come out by stagecoach back then and say, the air is healthier out here, the ocean air is healthier out here. And so he and the different, people with a lot of money from New York City and the railroad baron decided that they were going to set up a railroad instead of stagecoaches to bring people out here on the East End. And so that's what they did. So while they went right through the heart of our nation, which was our ancestral lands, and they just used this false instrument. They worked with the Southampton town proprietors. People were paid off. So part of building, even the golf course that came, later, maybe 10 or 20 years later, within that time, by that time, they had employed Shinnecock people because those were the only people, different workers. And before that, we were the men from our tribe were out on the ocean whaling all over the world, all these world ports, because they always knew how to whale back in that time. Even before the colonizers came, they saw that they were whalers. They saw what they used the oil for, and they knew that they could use that to. At one point, there was so many whales and so much oil to be gotten out of our seas here that it lit up all of London at one point, this oil, before there was electricity. So it was anything that when the colonizers came to commodify, to buy, sell, make themselves rich is what they did at the expense of us. And if they had to dig up, for a foundation to put their mansions in Shinnecock Hills, so be it. They just dug them up, and it was kind of like a thing, I guess, back then to have skulls of Native people and put it on rich people's mantles or, over their fireplaces. It was a cool thing for them. It's sick, but that's what they did.
But the fact that they sold it, how do you sell something that's not yours? Like, that's crazy.
Well, Native people didn't even we weren't even considered American citizens until 1924. So you had no recourse to go into court. Plus, you needed money to fight them. You had no recourse. They would just do what they wanted to do. And now we're trying to clean up the mess. And of course, it's getting harder and harder with, what's going on in our country now. To not talk about the truth. As an educator, more and more, let's get rid of DEI. Let's get rid of, these books, because different books are going to tell the story. It's American story. It's not Black story. It's not white story. It's all of our story.
Right.
And it should be told.
It should be told for sure, which is why I'm here with you. So thank you again. because so I mean I want to get back to the museum, but I want to get to the nitty gritty. I mean, because I think I'm on this journey, this spiritual journey to finding my roots, so to speak. You know what I mean? And I felt such a connection to that Hamptons. I really did. I don't know. I just loved it there. There's places you go and you're like, I don't care for it, or I don't think I would feel comfortable. I wouldn't move here. Certain places call you, speak to you. And I had
Mhm.
never been to the Hamptons. I had never been past New York City, really, like any of
Mhm.
the boroughs. So I was excited to now, I'm one step closer. I've never been, past the Hamptons now. And to come there, love it so much, come there for art and soul, like I just nothing happens by chance.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't be shocked if I had some Shinnecock roots or something. Seriously. But it doesn't have to be that. But I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked.
Mhm.
And that gets me to my next question is we talk about indigenous people and then we talk about people who look European, so to speak.
Mhm.
Right. And then a lot of people call the indigenous people who look European, they call them the government issued
Mhm.
Native Americans. And because people think that Native Americans that, have more of a skin tone like me are like the real Native Americans or whatever. I don't know, so it's like that leads me to want to know, like, are all Black people then Native Americans or indigenous? Because see, they call us Negro, then it was African American, and then we supposedly came over on ships from Africa and whatever. And but but then they say, well, we were in all four corners of the earth, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know who I am. I swear I don't. It's like I don't know if I believe this slave story that they continue to
Mhm.
push out.
Mhm.
Because part of me feels like it's a little propaganda. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But there is truth to it. But then, so it's just deciphering all of these stories and figuring out what's true.
Mhm.
What is your take on that? Like as far as government issued or skin tone, um, because I've seen the whitest, so to speak, of Native Americans say, I hate white people. And I was
Mhm.
like, sir, you but then he was like, I'm not white. I came across, he was like, no, I'm Native American and I'm from such and such so and so. Like, I mean, represent, and I was like, oh, excuse me. I had no idea.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
talk a little bit about like what you felt whenever I said any of that.
Well, I guess I could just speak, just through the Shinnecock perspective and through the Hassanamiska one. But specifically, since I live on Shinnecock and through my mother's nation, which is matrilineal, we come in all colors here on Shinnecock,
Mm-hmm.
and all hair textures and everything. We're like a rainbow of people. Not all native nations are like that. In some native nations, you have to marry within your own nation, or the people, you can decide to marry somebody else, but you cannot bring that person back to your reservation. Like the Mohawk people, they're very strict uh,
Mm-hmm.
with their marriage laws. There's some nations out there that the way that they have developed relations with the government to government relations, there was always a lot of racial bias with that. And then it goes, the whole back to enslaved people. Well, not only were people who originated from the African continent enslaved, but native people were enslaved right along. Out here in this area, there's a place you'll have to visit. Maybe you heard about it while you were visiting. It's on Shelter Island, and it's called Sylvester Manor. And with me, growing up, I can remember distinctly in fifth grade in the Southampton school district, and we had a really good social studies teacher. And one of the kids said, well, what we were talking about, the different slave ships and all that. And they said, well, what about here in Southampton? Was there any slavery, enslaved people? And he was like, well, there was, but not that much. It was mostly in the southern states. Well, you go and take a little ferry right across to Shelter Island, which is an island in between the North and South Fork of Eastern Long Island. And there's this whole manor that had at least 300 people enslaved over there. And it was called some type of plantation. It had a different name to it, but it's called Sylvester Manor. And what it did, it was support the where people were enslaved on the different islands in the Caribbean. And it was like a triangle to farm different animals and different products to feed, different people, to keep that engine running. And like the sugar trade was involved in it, tobacco and rum, through this place on Sylvester Manor, going down to the Caribbean. I'm not sure which island. It was the main island that they shipped to, but they had this whole thing going, this whole, again, just like the whaling, they come and take over the whaling and then get people for free labor to do all of this work. So I always think, why couldn't they have paid people? Why couldn't they have just offered, you want to, help to build this new place that we stole, but why couldn't they have been fair to people?
My question is, yes, they could have been fair to people, but the thing is, it's like, why are we asking them anything? They didn't ask you, so to speak. They didn't ask the nations of people who are already here. So like, why are we playing nice, so to speak, like with them? Like, I mean, and I also just feel like it's not in, and I say we and I say our because I feel I'm Native American. I am. I just don't know what nation of people I am from. But regardless of that, even if I am from a boat on Africa, they did the same thing. The colonizers, they did the same thing. So it's like they did not have any regard for the people who were here already.
Right.
They lied. They said that they were going to do this. Then they got whatever they wanted, and then they didn't do anything. I'm from Philadelphia, so the
Lenape
people were, I want to say, prominent there, right? Honestly, I have no idea if I know anybody that's from the Lenape tribe. Do you? Are they wiped out?
No, they're around because part of near New York, they were known, the Lenape people were there. Some of them were forced to go further west, but they're around. Some of them, I think, ended up in Wisconsin. Groups of them. Some of them live in New York City. A lot of indigenous people from everywhere live in the cities, and that was all manipulated through the government also to make conditions so awful on reservations that in order to find work, you had to go somewhere. So a lot of people end up in the city.
It's just interesting. I have so many questions. So why are we asking? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just in our nature to be kind to people. Um, but the Ponqugue. How do you pronounce that? That was a what is it?
Ponquag.
Ponquag. Now, is that a nation of people?
No, it's just it would be a place. I'm not sure the translation right now, but it would be a name. It could be like place where you can get a lot of, I don't know, type of fish or eels. I don't know what the translation is, but it describes, land and what the land is known for.
Okay, because I know it's like, I feel like it's a Native American name.
It definitely is a native word for sure.
Native word.
Yeah.
So then what was your native language?
Our native language still is Algonquin.
Algonquin.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, this weekend at Stony Brook University, at Stony Brook, Jeremy, my son, curated a exhibit, and
Mhm.
it's from Native people from Shinnecock and from different places on Long Island as well, and throughout the nation. And it's all about language revitalization, because
Mhm.
that was the first thing that they took away from us when they came. They said that we weren't Christian, so we needed to learn, the Bible. So then that whole exhibit is all about language and how they translated the Bible with different Native people. Like there was this one man from Long Island, and he helped to translate it with this reverend. And then they went up and down the East Coast trying to get people to convert to Christianity. But in telling relatives and ancestors, well, you can't speak that native language anymore, but we're going to teach you about the Lord and Christ through our Bible. But what ended up, it's helpful to us now as we try to revive the language. Like one of the people from Shinnecock always says that the language slowly went away, but now it's slowly coming back again. But it definitely is Algonquin, and our dialect is Shinnecock. And even Thomas Jefferson had come out to our neighboring nation, that one I was talking about. Mastic is the neighboring nation, and they're called the Unkechaug or the Puspatuk people. And they still have a very small reservation about half an hour away from us to the west. And so they have people there who also are reviving the language as well. But it's really, if you can have a chance to come up to the University of Stony Brook to see this amazing exhibit, it's just incredible about the language. There's interactive films that one of my cousins, Winitu, put together, and just reviving the language with children and their parents on Shinnecock. So, I mean, it's like a whole, you could probably spend the whole day just
Yeah.
going to this current exhibit. It's in a huge building at Stony Brook right now.
I feel like it's such a shame that, we have to fight to get our things back. Because, don't you be anti-Semitist.
Mm,
Because they've not lost anything. Oh, but if
mm,
you say that, oh my God, I can't say that, because if I say that, then I'm anti-Semitist and I'm saying something that's so wrong. Because
right.
we did lose, they did lose, and they did, but they've got schools for their kids learn Hebrew. They have adapted to this culture that really doesn't belong to them for real. Um, uh, you know, Imposters in a way, and I feel like they've done the same to all of the indigenous nations. My son went to a private school called Mequon one time, and I'm
Mm,
like, Mequon? I don't know if it was like the Mequon people or if it was the Lenape people, and I don't know what
mm,
Mequon really means, but I know this is native. And when they sing that song at the school, whatever it is, the open house, this land is your land, this land is my land, from California to New York Island, and it's just like, wow, you really see that they are throwing it in your face. That's disrespectful. That's a disrespectful song.
it is.
The land is not your land. It's his.
Yeah. No, not stolen land.
Oh my God. So me and my mom were like, you got to be kidding me. They really actually singing this. And on top of it, they are very exclusionary. It's like, yes, it's just like a slap in the face. This is the land that we stole, and we're going to keep the names of the native language, words, tribe, and we're going to do our own thing on it. And we're not going to allow you to come back. We're not
Exactly.
going to accept you into the schools. We're not going to do none of that. We're going
Mm,
to tell you that we don't have anything to support you. If you want your son to be here, you got to put him on drugs because we don't have anything for kids that have ADHD.
mm,
Like, it's crazy. And then when I say something, I'm wrong.
right. And all you're doing is being an advocate.
So
Yeah, that's
it
how.
is terrible and it makes me sad.
Mhm.
It really does. So talk to me a little bit about Seneca Village.
Mhm.
Was that like the Manhattan Nation? Was Manhattan a nation of people, or like because I don't really know any of this history. I feel like I should.
Mhm.
You're my link.
I know a little bit. I've heard of Seneca
Well,
Village, and I know that.
what made me think about it is because when you said that with the Shinnecock, they took your land and built parks. So with Seneca Village, they took that land and made Central Park.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, so do you know any more than that, I guess? Like what was that about? Where are those people now? Did they move them up to wherever you all are, or like I don't.
I think Seneca Village had a lot of, it was like Manhattan going into transition, and most of Manhattan was being built up in downtown, way downtown. And that was with the Dutch and the English fighting over it. And that's why, like, Wall Street went up because they were fighting and, you know, running the natives out of there. So people started to go north of Manhattan. People who had less money. So I think that Seneca Village was a combination of different indigenous people. And
Mhm.
Lenape would have been included. I think there's also called a Muncie group, and
Mm.
I've seen maps that call Mannahatta,
Uh-huh.
so probably they moved up, but it was all I believe it was all oppressed people. So there were, black people, there were native people, there was a mix of people, probably poor white people too, who lived up in Seneca Village. And then when they decided they wanted to beautify that area, then they just kicked them all to the curb. So who knows, where some of them ended up going.
Mhm.
We're 2 hours away,
Right.
and even more. And during that time when there was a Seneca Village, the railroad probably wasn't in. And even if they had started the railroad, it hadn't probably reached. I don't know. I'd have to do a timeline to look at that more. But I think that the Nature Conservancy
Mhm.
does have information about that, about Seneca Village, in order to, find out more information about it.
Okay. I'm gonna have to do some research.
Mhm.
Um, so you talked a little bit about certain other nations having strict laws about marrying.
Mhm.
Did you marry within the either one of the either one of the nations that you're from?
Yes, I ended up marrying my neighbor two or three houses away.
Oh wow. Okay.
Local, Avery is my husband, Avery Dennis. So his dad was Avery Dennis Sr., and he's Shinnecock, and he married a Shinnecock, and that was
Mhm.
Dorothy. Her maiden name was Dorothy Smith. So yeah, we're a bunch of Shinnecocks here
Mhm.
in this particular line.
Mhm.
Um, and then, her mom was Shinnecock, her dad was Shinnecock, and then
Mhm.
on my his grandfather's side, on his father's side, that mom was Shinnecock also. So, but she
Okay.
married someone different. His dad is from another area. I think maybe even down there in Washington or something. So there's different mixtures, but here on our particular nation, you have to go back to three main names, and these are the oldest names when Native people on Shinnecock first started using last names, because before that it was only first names. You didn't
Mhm.
need to have a last name. The colonizers did all that. So it's Cuffy,
Mhm.
Bun,
Mhm.
um, or Kellis. But a lot of people here have married, each other through time, and that was the only way that we could kind of survive. So a lot of people can go back to all three names, two names, maybe just one name. But I know my husband's family, they go back to all three directly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty common here. But, even though we all go back and that's a must for our nation and we have an enrollment where people, you have to prove that that's who you connect to. But you don't have, we don't have to go through this whole idea, this other colonizers idea of, well, what's your percentage? How much of it are you? You don't look full blooded to me.
Mm-hmm.
They put everybody in some kind of category.
Right.
And it's racism, and it's just a way to try to take away our heritage, our land. But we're here, been here before they came, gonna be here during and after when they go to Mars or wherever they're going.
That's right. That's right. I want to get back to the museum, but you said something when we were at the museum. I said, "Well, how come I don't know a lot about Shinnecock people?" And you said that it was by design that we are
Mhm.
not talked about, discovered, anything. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Right.
How come we didn't know it was a peninsula? The only peninsula we learn about in school is Florida. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Florida is a huge peninsula. You'll learn about the Hamptons because Southampton is there.
Mhm.
You won't learn about, but Southampton stole Shinnecock land to become Southampton. You won't learn about, people had like menial labor jobs to build up, these estates here or to service the people. And, I always believe that one of the reasons why they didn't just kill us all off or just come after the rest of the land is because they needed labor for these mansions. They needed chauffeurs, they needed maids, they needed somebody to cook, clean, take care of their children. As a matter of fact, one of our relatives, her name was Rebecca Kellis, and she used to work for the Roosevelts, and she used to babysit for Teddy Roosevelt. And
Mm.
so, I mean, there's all these stories and that have never been written because nowadays, or even me growing up, all I would hear was, well, there's no native people west or east of the Mississippi River. And that all has to do with the Trail of Tears. Like they love to talk about the Cherokees and the
Mhm.
Trail of Tears, but what they don't also add is they made some Seminoles move. They made the Creek people move. They made the Choctaw people move. All you hear about, mostly is Cherokees. But as more and more people are educated, or indigenous people are writing what the true story is, or doing presentations, or even someone like famous poets, the poet laureate Joy Harjo, actually came out to Shinnecock and had a little, a day at Ma's house. So, we're getting more and more on the map, but it's
Mhm.
intentional because in this American nightmare, they don't want you to know that there's still natives around. They don't want you to know that there's still people around who can say, your house is on my property. And, there might come a time when they're going to have to move. Right now, we can't even, we're having trouble trying to use some of our land that is west of the Shinnecock Canal, and it's called West Woods. And we're having a time still with the town of Southampton saying, well, that's not really your land. So we have to spend all this money, millions of dollars, and the town of Southampton will use their millions of dollars to fight us in court, whereas the federal government already said that's Shinnecock land. It's always been indigenous land over there, and if it's indigenous land, you can do whatever you want to. And what we wanted to do is to build a travel plaza and a gas station. At another time in the past, we were thinking of doing a casino. And the people have fought us every inch of the way. It's like you might as well be back in the 1600s again.
Right.
or the 1700s or the 1800s, because it's the same thing over and over again. You try to, promote yourself. You try to bring back resources to the nation for our, we do have a little preschool here to strengthen that. We have elders, they need elder care. We would like to have our own school so that we can teach what the true history is,
Mhm.
K through 12. We would even like to take that Southampton Stony Brook campus and have that as a indigenous campus.
What
So
did
that
you I
people,
mean, have you considered using the land, so to speak, that that Ma's house is on and starting a I mean, you could probably have a school right there in the museum. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know you want it to be like more official than that, but I mean, we
I don't
got
know.
by
You,
on one room schoolhouses, and those kids went to Yale and Harvard. We
yeah,
don't
yeah,
need their education necessarily, for fundamental and education. We didn't need that. The
right,
fundamentals, the basics, the elements, the elementary, things. We didn't need their stuff because we always miss out.
right.
We, I, I'm I'm a whole adult and I'm asking questions that I feel like I should know.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, we actually do. We have the Winnichinnock Preschool, which has been around for, I think, probably a little bit over 10 years. And, that took a lot of time to get that whole thing together to secure funds. But it's up and running, and it's for children who are, I think, 6 weeks old up to fourth grade. Not a big, huge school, but it's, a very strong school, beautiful. Maybe when you come back next time to visit, maybe you could come and, see the school. Also, before that, back in the 1800s, there was a school on Shinnecock, and it was a one-room schoolhouse. And my husband's, both his mom and dad, as children, attended that school on Shinnecock. But as far as academics, it wasn't strong in academics. I've seen pictures from back in the day, and it showed the girls learning how to cook. So it was more of that, oh, let's prepare that. Well, it was, during that time where people were homemakers anyway, but, they're not trying to prepare people for, professional, any kind of professional work. But I mean, that ended in the probably the last class ended in the 50s. And then they would only go up to maybe eighth grade and then switch over to the Southampton School District. But even during that time, back in the 40s, 30s, and 40s, then, it was wartime. So a lot of people, maybe spent a little time in college. Some people graduated, but a lot of people, joined the men. A lot of them joined the war and may have gotten their GEDs later in life, come back for them. So we have had education here. We also have after school programs, and we also have a boys and girls club that's fairly new. That's probably maybe 6 or 7 years old or less. And a tremendous amount of work is being done with the children, after school, tutoring, and some of that money funding comes from the Boys and Girls Organization, but a lot of it comes from the other organization that I'm a board member on. It's called Hampton's Community Outreach, and that's not funding from Shinnecock. It's an outside agency, and it was founded by a woman called Merit Molin, and she's actually originally from, I believe, Sweden. And it just seems like when we do get a lot of different help, some of the people are from Europe and have a deeper appreciation versus people who originated from this area. Maybe they're like 10 generations in. But then we've also had other people who have helped us tremendously, like with the Peconic Land Trust. That's an agency that was actually organization, nonprofit, that was founded by John Halsey, and his family were some of the original people who came from Lynn, Massachusetts to Southampton. So there's that whole history, but he's helped us tremendously, also with his organization, to get Neomuk Land Trust up and running. So we have friends, we have allies that we have developed, and they're not, there's some of them are indigenous from other places, but a lot of them are people who, want to learn the true history and be responsible for it,
Mhm.
um, and know that their ancestors have severely damaged people and they are not feeling good about it. And so they're helping.
Mm. Well, what can we do? What can I do to help?
I guess like really, maybe just focus in on different things that Ma's House is doing, because we did used to have a museum on Shinnecock. The building is still there, but the original founders, most of them have passed away, and it kind of just, I don't know, it just was not good management,
Mhm.
and we just can't seem to get it up and running. So right now, the only place where, just I would say Ma's House, is up and running. Jeremy gets back to everyone right away. So, he's a good, uh, good place to keep in touch. But there's also, it depends on what, where you would want to help. Like if you wanted to help, um, if you're interested in water, or people who are interested in the pollution of the water, there's the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. I'm
Mhm.
also on the board of that. And so that's all about getting the nitrates out of the water. And it's the Shinnecock kelp is a type of seaweed that loves to take the nitrates, and they grow faster. It's like seafood. And then what they do is they dry out the seaweed, and then it can be used for fertilizer versus commercial poisoned fertilizer that's going to reintroduce poisons back into the water, because it's going to actually seep back in the closer you are to the bays or the ocean, or wherever you live, even groundwater for that matter. So there's that. There's the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. There's Moss House Dot Studio, that I can say if people are interested in the Shinnecock Boys and Girls Club. That's Joshua Sylvester is the director there. So that's a good one to connect to. Tila Troge, she's an attorney. She's in charge of the Shinnecock Kelp Farmers. Or Danielle Hobson Begun is the one who reaches out to the public and makes those different arrangements with people who have different questions about the kelp farmers. And of course, there's Neomuk Land Trust, where, if you want to help us get back our land, we were able to, with Peconic Land Trust, with a private donation, we were able to secure our most precious burial grounds called Sugarloaf, and that was also with assistance from the Community Preservation Fund. So with the Community Preservation Fund, that's from the town of Southampton, and that's a 2% tax on any real estate development in Southampton. So we're talking about, some of these houses that are going for $40 million. So 2% of whatever that is, if you're good in math, is going into this fund. And what we're trying to do is we want the Community Preservation Fund out of the town of Southampton to buy back as much as Shinnecock Hills that they stole in the first place from people who are willing sellers. And the problem is Southampton is, it's the Hamptons. So it's where everybody wants to build their mansions and whatnot. And the rich and famous live there. So builders will come in and offer homeowners who want to leave more money than the Community Preservation Fund can actually, give. So then that, with that, when we have to find private donors who can make up the difference, because we don't want any more of our people dug up, like what has happened before, in 2018, right after we demonstrated. with the US Open and told them that they were actually golfing on burial grounds. About a month later, one of the ancestors was found. Someone was digging up a foundation in Shinnecock Hills, and they unearthed skeletal remains of our ancestors. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I had just joined the Graves Protection Warrior Society. My cousin Rebecca Ginia, who's been in charge of different burials. It's called unmarked burials. We come to find out in the state of New York has no law against it. If an unmarked burial is found
Mm-hmm.
on someone's private, what's private, their private land that they actually bought from the town of Southampton or whoever they bought it through, different hands, that exchanged it. They could just take those bones and throw them in the garbage. They don't have to report it or anything. Up until maybe 2 years ago, and that was through who I mentioned before, Tila Troge, who's an attorney, and also she's my niece as well from Shinnecock, and then the chief from the next tribe over from the Mastic Puspatuk Nation. He's also an attorney, and a few others, mostly from Shinnecock, some from Attinecock, went up to Albany and worked with Fred Thiel, who was our legislator at the time, who had been trying to get this law passed for New York State to join most of the other states in the United States to protect the people. And these people, these could be unmarked burials of Revolutionary War soldiers, they could be indigenous people, they could be people who were enslaved at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it could be anybody. If it's an unmarked burial ground, you could do whatever you wanted to do if it was on your private land. If it's on federal land, there's protection. It's called NAGPRA. But state and just private land, they just passed that bill, and it was hard. It was difficult to pass it, but it got done. So now there's actually laws if someone, decides, oh, I'm going to just, build my next mansion here in Shinnecock Hills. Um, if they find something, then they have to stop, and an anthropologist and archaeologist has to be brought in, and we need to be notified on the nation. That's been hard, to implement, even though that's the law. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole other thing. Now we have to let these people who have been working in the Southampton town places like the building department or the permit department, they don't know anything about this updated law. So we
Right.
have to educate them. Talk about educating people who do, they don't know. It's because they don't care to know. All they know is the bottom line. We're going to sell this land. We're going to put this money in our coffers called the CPF. And, you know, wherever they, like sometimes they spend money on these open fields near extremely prosperous people because they don't want anybody else building in the field. They want it to remain looking like a farm stand field from their mansion up at, further up in the hills. So they don't want to see condominiums going on down there or other people, the backyards of other people's mansions. So CPF will gladly purchase farmland, but it's not going to be used for farmland anymore. It's just going to be maybe rye plant will be put in there. It's just to be picturesque so the rich people can have a nice view to the ocean.
Mm. Mm.
So
Well.
sometimes we need help with the town of Southampton saying, we need advocates, we need people to call them, we need people to email them, we need people to send letters to say, you need to take care of these Shinnecock ancestors. Your predecessors sold that land illegally, and we don't want to see any more people dug up and thrown in a garbage somewhere.
Mm. You talked about the kelp farmers, and I know that at the museum right now at Ma's house, that's the exhibit that's happening. And so you pretty much talked about it already, but maybe, go into that a little bit more, because that was a very intriguing. I went to uh, Sag Harbor Hills Beach, I think.
Mhm.
And that's a private beach, but I did go there and I was in the water and there was kelp actually coming up.
Mhm.
So uh when I, came to Ma's house to see that the whole exhibit was Shinnecock um artist and had to do with kelp farming, I thought it was very interesting. So talk a little bit about that. It's the Indigenous Sea. What's the exhibit called?
Indigenous sea stories.
Indigenous Sea Stories. Okay.
Mhm.
So talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that. And then
Yes.
Jeremy Silva, who was your son, who is
Dennis.
founder, Jeremy
Yeah.
Dennis, forgive me,
Yeah.
who is your son and the founder of Ma's House, curated this exhibit, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. I think he and maybe Brianna, because we do have a curator, Brianna Hernandez,
Okay.
who is a curator. So I think it made this, the one at Ma's house was probably a combination of them both, but Brianna may have led more of that from Ma's house. Yeah, because we have the curator, and she's also an artist there, and so we have a little staff, and I'm on the staff too. But yeah, with the Indigenous Sea Stories, that's based on the Shinnecock kelp farmers, and they're very well known through the Nature Conservancy
Hmm.
in America. And so they started out working with the Sisters of St. Joseph and an organization called Green Wave, got them started. And they're a matriarchal staff as well as their group who go out into the waters of Shinnecock Bay mostly, and they work in the wintertime. Before that, they have a laboratory where they raise these little seedlings that are kelp. They're microscopic, little tiny plants, and they have to get the seeds from way out on Montauk Point. They don't dive for it, but they get a diver to go and get a plant that has the seeds on it. They bring it back to the hatchery, which is at the Sisters of St. Joseph villa that they work with in Hampton Bays, but it's the western side of Shinnecock Bay. It's right across from the Shinnecock Nation. We're also referred to as a reservation, it's shared water, but miles away. But you can see each other on on the other side. You can see the land. Um, and so they've been working for several years in planting the kelp in the bay, harvesting it, and then drying it out and making it into a product with Shinnecock kelp. And like I said, using it as fertilization. On that western side of Shinnecock Bay, the other thing that the town did not do was put in a sewer treatment. And yet they let so many people build houses, different companies, boating companies, harbors, right on the water. So if you're going to build right on the water, eventually all your waste is going to make its way seep into the bay. And
And
that,
that water looks so dirty.
yeah, so that's going to be the nitrogen.
Mm,
And so this is what the kelp does. Once they make this kelp farm, they wind it around ropes, these kelp, once they're old enough to go out there. And they just suck in all these nutrients. They get rid of all the excess nutrients
mhm.
and all the poisons from the water. And yeah, so that's what they've been doing. And I know that they have been other kelp farms have opened up on the bay on the other side where it's called Peconic Bay. That's on the north side. And so they're using their ancestral fishing and hunting rights
Mhm.
because during the colonial times, we have certain rights. And once it was like the Revolutionary War, they're trying to say, oh, well, that was just your rights with the colonizers. It's like, oh, no, it wasn't. That's our rights forever. As long as we're here, those are our hunting and fishing rights. So, yeah, so the paintings or the artwork of photography and film that's at Ma's house and the exhibit right now is based on the Shinnecock kelp farmers. And it's not to be confused with the nation itself,
Mm-hmm.
because Shinnecock Nation has its own environmental department where they're raising oysters. The Shinnecock kelp farmers has nothing to do with the nation except that we are also members of the Shinnecock Nation, but it's a whole separate, people get it all, oh, it's all Shinnecock, it's all Shinnecock. It's not, part of the political structure or business structure of the nation. It's its own separate entity, and it's in conjunction with the Sisters of St. Joseph, which is a Catholic order over
Mm-hmm.
in Hampton Bays. What we used to call good ground, and that's where people lived many years ago, and they started just moving us further and further east.
Mm-hmm.
There's part of the church still over there at good ground, and there's roads that are called Canoe Place Road, and you can just look at the beach there and just imagine hundreds of canoes were launched there. And then there's even old photographs showing where the huts were
Mm-hmm.
over there, and people are still buried over there.
So I remember you mentioning during our tour how the kelp also responds better to women's voices.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
When it's in the laboratory and microscopic, um, and they like change the water all the time. They make sure the pH is just correct in there. Um, so they also sing. They sing and they say poetry, kind words is what it's called.
Mhm.
And they actually have a recording of people singing to it. Sometimes the nuns, their main campus is about an hour away in Brentwood, and it's where retired nuns go after they've done their service out here all over Long Island. But they still want to be a part of it. So sometimes they, have times when they're singing to it or saying prayers for it or
Nice.
talking to it, and all of it, those kind words, they see it microscopically growing and responding.
Wow. You mentioned something earlier about when the colonizers came in and they stole the language and everything, and they wanted you to like start becoming Christians and everything because you weren't Christians, and you just talked about church, so it made me go back to that because that
Mhm.
was a question that I had. What was your religion, so to speak, if there was one? What did you practice? Spiritual practice. What were your spiritual practices?
Yeah, well, we had different names for, the Great Spirit, Manitou, and then spirits everywhere, and just thankfulness for everything, every living thing, and just the practice of just take what you need, and helping each other, um, and working together, and just that we had different beliefs with the sun and the moon and the stars and nature. So it was nature based, and just the thankfulness, and having medicines, and being thankful that for that, and saying prayers for that. And then the way we would, and still do, conduct our prayers to the Creator for creating all these things, and our Mother Earth, that would be who we would be thankful for. And to use tobacco, because it was before it was cigarettes, putting that into the pipe, and saying that, and believing that the smoke from the pipe goes up to the Creator with the prayers.
Mhm.
So it would be that type of practice, spirituality, I guess
Mhm.
you would call it, and with all of nature. Prayers for safety, prayers when the men would go out, hunting those whales. They were very brave, and prayers of protection, prayers for good harvest, If people got sick, prayers to, we had something called the Pawa, was the medicine man. And that word has changed into powwow, but
Mm-hmm.
it's different. Once it started moving west, then that whole idea of powwow became something, different. It wasn't so much the medicine people anymore.
This is I want to talk to you about so Brianna, right?
Yes.
Was she the one who spoke to us? She had the pretty earrings on that she
Yes.
made.
Yes.
Talk to me about your beading workshop.
Okay. I usually have breeding workshops on Fridays at
Mhm.
Ma's house, and the introductory, if people came in for the first time, that's what they usually make as a pair of earrings. And
Mhm.
it's a 2 hour class, and it's free. It's downstairs in the workshop area of Ma's house, and we have a great supply of beads and earring wires, and sometimes shells are used, or like little metal cones, like a variety of beads. Like sometimes they're bigger beads and ceramic beads. And then there's other people who are in advanced classes or have been coming all along. And sometimes they're doing beadwork around hats. So you get to see what other people are doing, or the different stages that they're working on. And in the past, we've made rosette necklaces, which are round necklaces. We've also worked on what's called bandolier bags, which are inspired by other nations, the Cree people, and they were once used as hunting bags. And we do wampum, shell beadwork, necklaces sometimes, earrings with wampum. So yeah, it's a variety.
Okay.
And everybody can come. It's
Okay.
not only for BIPOC people, because sometimes people are like shy if they're not, Black or Indigenous people of color. So as far as the people who come, if anybody can come.
Okay. And that's every Friday at what time?
Usually it's from 6 to about we say 8:30, but we usually go to 9.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Every Friday, 6 to 9. I'm gonna say 6 to 9, but 6 to 8:30.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beading
And you
work.
have the other thing is you go on the Moz House website,
Mm-hmm.
because Jeremy Dennis, who, like we said, is the founder and a primary artist there. He puts it on the Moz House .studio website. And, if there's not going to be one, then he won't put it on there. But, mostly he'll announce it a few days earlier that it's going to be happening. Sometimes we have resident artists coming in, and sometimes they take that slot on Friday. So they'll come in, maybe they'll show you how to do clay, or maybe they'll show you how to do some kind of other art piece, or working with materials, collages, cloth, dyeing cloth. So it just depends. You just really have to go on that Moz House website and check out the workshops. Sometimes the workshops are not at Moz House. They might be in one of our cooperating partnerships. So they might be in Bridgehampton at a Bridgehampton museum there, or they might be at the History Museum in Southampton. So Jeremy has, they might be at Guildhall, they might be at the Parish Art Museum. There's different places that we kind of satellite out to, and have our resident artists also do different projects. So there's a lot going on all the time. There's usually multiple shows going on that either Jeremy curated or Brianna curated, or they curated together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah. I recommend going online to Jeremy. He has another online that's very educational. It's called On This Site.
Okay.
And if you plug that in, www.onthisite.com or whatever, it will show up, and it's a lot of great history, a lot of great stories. Um, there's another thing that you can do, and it's called, I believe it's called like native.land.
Okay.
And it's this, I think it might be, I don't know exactly where it's based. It might be based out of California, it seems like. But it has this whole, it's like the globe, and it shows where all different indigenous people live. And then it might have information about their languages and who lived there before it was colonized. So that's really an interesting tool, native.land, if you want to know, well, who lived where my people are from. Like if your people was, somewhere in Philadelphia, well, who lived there in Philadelphia? And it's going to show the name of the different indigenous people who were there. And it might have like all kinds of, you can click on what battles took place there, what, other information that might go along with it. But I know we've used that for Long Island to show the main 13 tribes, but there were many, many more. But usually the 13 tribes are the ones listed. So you'll get more of an idea of where Shinnecock is, where you were, near Southampton, and the other ones that I was talking about. It's worth it to go on and check it out.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And everybody watching, if you want to help or just find more information about the Shinnecock Nation, the Shinnecock people, anything about your lineage, you can find information on the Moz House website. You can go to native.land, also on this site.com, and visit Moz House in Southampton, New York, and talk to and meet Denise Silva-Dennis yourself. So
right. And also we wanted to add, it's open door on Thursdays from 10 to 5 at Moz House. And if you can't make it on a Thursday, make sure you get in touch with Jeremy. He'll get in touch with you right away to make an appointment, just to make sure there's somebody there.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. So we will see you again very soon. And until next time.